Hello, welcome to the Parenting Program Show. I am your host, Jeremy, the Kung Fu Guy. I am a force of nature, married to another force of nature. Her name is Autumn, and we have two amazing, explosive balls of energy called kids. I am a speaker, teacher, author, catalyst, and Kung Fu master, here to help you empower your kids to speak up and own their voice. We're going to unlock and remove the chains of childhood that seem to hold us from our destiny with the tools to have inner strength, confidence to speak up, be heard, and be understood. Let's go play. Game on, yo. All right, Parenting Nation, and welcome. Today we have on a very special guest, the ever so powerful Miss Forbes Riley. And I have to tell you, I was actually on her podcast not that long ago, and she was just amazing. You know me, I'm a force of nature. You know my wife, Autumn, of course, a force of nature, named after a season. And Forbes is one of those amazing individuals who is just on fire, and she is just a force and going in so many different directions. You're going to want to listen to this today because there's going to be insight, there's going to be humor, and there's going to be speed because she doesn't waste time and she doesn't pull her punches, which is my favoriteest thing in the whole entire world. So that was my introduction of you, just because you have your professional bio. There's ForbesRiley.com. There's actually...
Oh, believe me, I much prefer people, if you want to read my bio, you want to see who I am, go, yeah. But I love, that was a very personal touch because we have met, and I appreciate that very much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Actually, sometimes cut people off because we've got stuff to talk about. So let's get to this.
Absolutely. So today we're here to talk about really helping parents to empower their kids, helping kids to empower themselves. I do want to try to keep this, PG, G language. That way the kids can listen with their parents. But
are you trying to warn me about something? Have you heard about my language?
Well, I had somebody on earlier who dropped a couple of bombs, and I was like, oh, we got to cut that out. Sorry.
Oh, well, let me share something with you. I have two 16-year-olds who can drop bombs all over the place with the music and the videos that they watch today.
Oh, yeah.
They're embarrassing us.
Oh, wait. Just go watch them dance. Wait, is that dancing or is that, should you get a room?
Oh, no. I'm not going to do that because I don't mind. I grew up in the whole dirty dancing. I won't criticize that. But when you start using the four-letter word and you're 10 years old, we got a problem.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm okay with, we call it language enhancers, right? They're like flavorings for your words. But my daughter's 5 and she gets frustrated. She's at preschool and she goes, mother, father. And the teachers light up. That's how I swear, because it's so much funnier and it's so much better to interrupt myself, right?
I love mother, father. That's better. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny. When my son was 5 years old, I had a shirt that I created called the F word. It's not what you think. And on the back, it was a picture of my face, and it said, fun, Forbes, fantastic, family, fashion, and my little boy was like, Mom, you know what else that means then? He said the F word. I'm like, you're 5. How did you know that?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, it's amazing the world we live in. And it's this idea, if we can empower our kids to speak up, and that's actually a friend of mine was talking about, he swears in front of his kids. He doesn't care because, I'm from New Jersey. It's what we do. And I'm like, all right, different standards for different families. I get it.
And you know what? And I'm from Long Island, and he's kind of right. Because I was 16 years old saying the F word because I don't know what it is. But when you move your hands like this in your head.
Mm-hmm. It's just part of the thing. It's not a problem.
All right, let's get to the art of parenting.
Yeah, so I know you're a parent, and like me, you were kind of a little bit further along in life when you became a parent. I was in my late 30s. So how does that change your life, do you think? Because you were successful, had so many different things going, and then it's like, oh, hey, and we're going to hit you. Not only you had one, you had two at the same time.
Well, so let me give some insight because many years ago, I give a lot of advice to women about all kinds of things. And one woman came up to me very early on after I had my kids, and she said, oh my gosh, she said, I don't think I'm going to have kids. I'm like, why? She said, well, because I might have a son and I wouldn't want to, I don't know what to do with a boy. And I thought, wow, how crazy sad. Mm. So for me, I love children. I've always loved children. I envisioned myself having them or two. My sister had her kids 20 years before me. Oh, wow. And I was busy doing my career. Met my then husband at 31. We got married at 35, and we tried. And we tried. And what we didn't know, this is great advice, is that we didn't need to test the man. We tested me for all kinds of stuff. I was fine and thought, well, maybe it's just not the right timing. And we made ourselves nuts. To the point that I think maybe even destroyed our relationship a little because it's like, honey, it's 5 o'clock, let's do it. And it's like, that's not fun.
Nope.
Only to find out that he had a very low, motility rate or whatever it was. Ended up, my parents got sick. So now we've been trying for 5 years. My mom calls one day and she's got cancer. The next thing I know, she's in the hospital having an operation. My dad calls us, he's got cancer. They're both 70 years old. And within a year, they were both gone. and then my best friends, and then my only family. And then 9/11 hit a month after my mom passed away, and I am a 9/11 survivor. I have a ticket on Flight United 93. I did not get on the plane because I got rerouted the night before in New York, which I don't know the woman who saved my life, but I'm grateful that she did.
Wow.
And my brother-in-law's a New York City fireman who didn't go to work that day, and we lost all of the men that we all grew up with our whole life when the second building came down. So that September, October of 2001 was beyond devastating. And I woke up one day in December and said to he's now my ex-husband, if I don't have a kid, I don't know what I'm doing here. I know that sounds weird, but I'm like, I need something because I don't feel like I have anything.
Right.
And the funny thing is when you say to the universe what you want, there was one, and I tell this very publicly because I think people need to share the truth. Mm-hmm. There was an ad in my insurance newsletter that said 1 month of free fertility. That was a $10,000 ad, little coupon. And I brought it to my doctor and he says, and I quote, well, I can accept that, but you've got some pretty old eggs at 42. And I'm like, that wasn't the question. And it ended up being, well, no, I understand why he said that. So we harvested my eggs and his sperm, mixed them up in a jar and a little test tube, I guess, whatever the point is. And here's the crazy thing about life. And I hope you guys can share the magic of this story because it touches my heart in a way that I don't think anything else ever has and ever will. My kids are conceived on March 20th because when you do it that way, the doctor knows exactly when you conceived. Obviously, he was in the room. Mm-hmm. And that turns out to be my mother's birthday, the first year after she passed away. And then he says, your twins are going to be born on December 7th, which is my father's birthday.
Wow.
That is a 1 in 1 trillion coincidence that you could have that happen and then actually give birth to little boy and little girls. Like, I don't know how we did it. But the message that I got from my parents from beyond was, you're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And I know that sounds crazy, but I never had a question or a concern. I was healthy. I was on the cover of a national magazine at 8 months pregnant. I was huge. I pushed out, get this, 2 7-pound children. Okay.
Yikes.
Right. And so yay for my fitness career. I had a waist as large. I was 65 inches around and 65 inches tall. That was a kind of a problem. Anyway, so one of the things that I set out to do is, one, I ate healthier than I've ever eaten during that whole time. I nurtured these little creatures. And when they came out, they were very healthy, knock on wood. Not everybody's twins at that age do. Mm-hmm. But maybe it was my mindset. Maybe I was so convinced that they were going to be amazing and wonderful. And then along the way, and this is my advice, I've not written this book, but I probably should at some point. I love psychology. I love NLP. My dad was a magician. I love the art of manipulation. I know that sounds crazy, but it's persuasion and sales. And as you can read in my bio, I've sold over several $1 billion worth of product on television. So as I was raising these two beautiful little, first thing I want to share with a new mother is that my ex-husband looked at me one day, the kids were about 3 weeks old, and he leaned over and he says, hey, I got to tell you something. I don't really love them. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad you said that. Thank you. Because I said, I don't know if I love them either. Mm-hmm. And because you get this expectation that this creature comes out and you're supposed to just love it. Well, that's where the whole postpartum thing comes in. Everybody else comes over and they just love it. I've got a big belly. Everything hurts on me. And what he meant was they're just creatures. They're not even cute in the first couple of weeks. They're wet. They poop a lot. There's nothing. They're like odd and you have no handbook. So you're like, okay. When he said that, I thought, thank you. And then about a week later, my son smiled at us. I'm like, oh, that's what it's about. Mm. So forgive yourself if there's not this immediate, oh my God, bond. Yep. It actually, I think it happens more with puppies than it does with babies because they're all really, really cute. Babies are what? They're kind of slimy, right? Right. And, well, the different people, we produce neurotransmitters, right? Oxytocin is the unconditional love hormone. And we have different ratios of that inside us. And then we have different levels of sensitivity and uptake. So when we create those rules, we cause ourselves our own pain. You're exactly right. Well, and I thought, because otherwise you get postpartum going, well, I don't, And now they're also a lot of work. That's the other thing that you don't realize the first couple of weeks, especially when you have two of them. You're always changing, feeding, playing. And you're like, and there's no one point do they actually go, hey, Mom, hi, nice to meet you. So I will, as they got older, a couple things became very important to me. And you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Don't try this on your teenagers. It won't work. But if you've got little ones, I was watching the TV series, The Nanny, the British Nanny. And she would go into households where kids were ruling the roost. They were horrible. And I said to myself, that's not going to happen in my world. And so somebody said to me, siblings don't share. And I'm like, okay, well, if they by nature don't share, can I create a system for that? So here was the system. I would have the two kids, they were like under 5, and I would grab one. They both wanted the toy. They wanted the toy. I would take the toy away and say, hey, you and I are going to count to 10 very slowly. You get to play with the toy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I would turn to my son and take the toy away. She would play with it. And I go, hey, let's count to 10. 1, 2. And we would go back and forth. At one point, about 4 times back and forth, one kid gets bored and does something else.
Mm-hmm.
So we created this mechanism, and I told whoever babysat or nannied for me at the time that this is what we do. And you do it every time you see them both grab for the same thing. Well, I have to tell you, there was never, and I hate to glorify this, but there's never any fighting in my house.
Right.
There was nothing to fight over. And at some point as they got older, the game changed. Just one would grab the toy and go, 110. I'm like, okay. So they would play with the toy for a second and go, well, this is ridiculous. We would go find our own toys.
Yep.
And I will tell you, that created a very harmonious household. That was one of the first things I did. Except it backfired. My daughter was about 10 years old, maybe 8, and she's standing by the swings, and she's crying. She's like, Mommy, I don't understand. This girl's been on the swing, and I keep counting to 10, and she just won't get off. And like, wouldn't the world be a nicer place if we could all just count to 10 and switch our attitude or our energy or do something nicer to somebody else, right?
Yeah, that's actually, if I can, for everyone playing at home, right, that's perfect because you have the 2 kids. They both, the toy becomes the fixation. By you engaging with one, you're providing that human connection, and the other one gets the thing, and then we switch it, and we just go back and forth until someone decides, okay, I'm satiated with whatever, or I'm bored, I'm disconnected, I'm going to go do something else. This is not fun anymore. And that's
I love the words you just layered, bored, satiated. That is just, thank you for clarifying. That was actually really beautiful.
Yeah. I love big words. They make me happy.
All right. Well, the second thing I did was the I want game, which is translated actually into a good part of my career. But so kids always say, Mommy, I want an apple, I want a kiss, I want a cookie, whatever they want, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I used to train dogs. And I had this little theory that a dog, you get them in that state, they see the treat, they're like, okay, what do you want me to do now? Okay, you want my paw? You want me to I'll do anything you want. Mm-hmm. I thought, wow, what if you dangled that carrot and did this with kids? Remember, I had 2 little ones, so it was fun to experiment. Mm-hmm. And so the kids would go, Mommy, I want a cookie. I go, great. And they would stand together. And it was the cutest thing. If you want and it would 10 commands. If you want a cookie, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And they would both wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. I said, if you want a cookie, touch your nose. If you want a cookie, ring your ear. If you want a cookie, point to your shirt. Well, just because they're younger, they need to learn these things. But I was always end the last 3 of them very specifically. If you want a cookie, say I love you to each other. If you want a cookie, give each other a hug and a kiss. And if you want a cookie, give Mommy a big hug and say I love you.
Perfect. We
did that 20 times a day. Mm-hmm. Every time it's I want some milk, great. If you want, and they don't realize at that age anything. They love doing this. So it was this wonderful game. Mm-hmm. And then a couple of things. Later, they're about 9 years old, stopped doing this a long time ago. And they walked in, I was at a party. My daughter was like, Mommy, I want. And I said, I wonder if this would still work. And sure enough, I said, well, if you want to, whatever, both of you wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And they looked at each other and they started to wiggle and they did the whole little thing. And I thought, you guys are programmed that when you say you want, dinner, I say, I want you to clean your room, and you do. Mm-hmm. We, again, have this mechanism in place that works really, really well.
Yeah. That's what I call dog training mode, right? You have this window of time where kids, they want to please the authority figure. And, what do I have to do to win? You structure the game for them. You make it simple. And then the 3 pieces you finished with was to create a connection and a bond that gets into their unconscious. And it's just this deep level of love and respect and care for each other is perfect, right?
Okay, you and I are going to write this book together because you just articulate what I did way better than I do. And again, here's the beautiful part about this in my personal life is that my daughter is now 16 years old. And the other day I hung up the phone and she's like, Mom, how come you don't say I love you when you hang up the phone? I'm like, oh. And then my son conversely said something. He'd gotten into a fight with his dad. And he said, Mom, because I was telling the story, he said, now I get it. He said, even if I'm mad at somebody, you or dad, I still end up saying I love you. Mm-hmm. I thought, yes, you do, because you're trained. And in fact, I ended up in the Jack Canfield Chicken Soup for the Soul book about this. The chapter was called How to Train Your Children Like Dogs. But because of some other unruly people, they taught how to train your babies like puppies.
That's cute. Yeah, it softens.
It softens, but it works. And I would love, it's funny, Jeremy, I've never gotten these theories out beyond this conversation. But it'd be fun to write the little book because I will tell you, my twins are now 16 years old. And I watched them through school. There were 4 sets of twins in their class. 4 sets of twins, right?
That's crazy.
Well, if you look at it, it's because they're older parents who may have done what I did. Think about
Right.
it. Julia Roberts has twins. Jennifer Lopez has twins.
They might have seen the same ad, said, "Hey, dude, we're saving 10 grand. Let's go."
There you go. It's a little calculated and wonderful, by the way. Great seeing two kids grow up at the same time. But mine were the closest. They were friendly. They loved each other. And a couple of other things. Again, I know we can talk about older parents, but I kept having these theories, like women were going, oh, my daughter's 2 years old and she's in her own big bed. And I thought, really, my kids are 4 years old and they're still in a crib, each their own crib. And you know why? Because I get a sense that they needed the connection to their toys. They don't need to be roaming the house at that age. They had cribs that were like at a kind of an L shape. They would wake up, smile, be happy, say hi to each other, and I'd have all kind of things for them to do. So it was never a nuisance. It was like they'd wake up in their own world and they loved it. Mm-hmm. I did the same thing I guess I'm sounding calculated as a mother, but I did the same thing with their stroller. I had this awesome stroller that had little cup holders, and literally until the time they were 4 years old, they would want to be in the stroller. I saw these moms go, oh, my kid's 2 years old. I'm like, great. And they're running around the store and I can't keep track of two of them. If they're in one space and they're happy and they got the little whatever they're doing and they're eating Cheerios, they were safe.
Yep.
And these little things really worked for me in such a profound way.
Yeah. So in my world, what you just did, the first step is you had boundaries, right? We're going to build a game. We got to have three factors. We got to have the boundaries. We got to have the rules. We got to have a way to score points. And so you're setting those structures in place and you're letting the kids kind of tell you when they're comfortable to move forward, right? Yep. Versus you're trying to force them, well, developmentally, you're supposed to be here. And so let me strive or achieve, or let me get ahead a little bit, because then I get more cool points with, I don't know who.
Yes, with the other families on the block, the other mothers at kindergarten.
There's a great Chinese story. There's a farmer, and he's trying to grow his crops and things aren't going so well, and the water and the different things. So he gets this bright idea. I'm going to go out every night and I'm going to tug 2 little tugs on every single plant. And he does this for a week. And he's like, I'm so smart. They're getting so big. And then he comes out a week later and they're all dead because he broke the roots and he pulled too hard.
That's funny. That's a great story. And it really does.
The process happen.
We had a huge second bedroom upstairs in the house that we used to live in. And so they were in the same bed. They're actually in trundle beds. And they stayed there till 10 and a half. Mm-hmm. And they shared their boy-girl. And it was perfect. And when we moved into a different house, they each got their own bedroom. But it was time then for that to happen. Right. And again, they were just close. They were still amazingly close and connected. And I think it's because you connect the roots with them. Another thing I noticed, which is interesting, because now they're teenagers and now I have no rules and I'm open for anything. Mm-hmm. They're well-behaved, they're straight-A students, they're conscientious. But I have found that there's this hormonal thing, this pulling away thing that I don't love. And my daughter doesn't let me hug and kiss her as much as she used to, which is just frustrating to me.
It's a phase. It's a season.
But I think I did something right. See, my mom, God rest her soul, was an only child. And for me and my sister, she wanted to be our best friend. She was my total best friend in life. But I didn't get very close to my sibling. And I remember saying to myself, I'm going to step out a little bit. I travel a lot. I'm going to let them be with each other rather than try to. And by the way, here's a couple things to that rule. I do take them each on vacation or on a work vacation separately. I've been to Europe with both of them by themselves. Perfect. Because that one-on-one time is unbelievable. Because when it's you with the two of them, it's like 2-on-1. And I realize that I don't get a whole lot of time. I get to watch them more, but I'm not part of their world because they were littler. But one-on-one, it's amazingly special. My daughter and I have a crazy close bond. In fact, she's speaking on stages. She's a marketer. She actually makes more money than her high school teachers. kind of a long story how that evolved.
That's awesome. We'll have to do another conversation about that, because I want to do a series on empowering your kids to take, to business and entrepreneur, and how do you get your kids to do those sorts of things. That's definitely something I'd love to explore.
And I'd love to have McKenna in on that, because it's an interesting conversation. And I will just give you a little tip for anyone listening. Don't force your kids into anything. Mm-mm. It's not, it's the most bizarre thing, but it's not your life to lead. It is theirs. And I know. Well, come on, seriously, my ex is an All-American Notre Dame football player. And when my son, who was quarterback of the team, said, I'm quitting, he's like, uh-oh. Dude, you don't love football. You can't, you're talented enough to be the quarterback of the high school team, and it's really a shame, but it's your life. And another thing that he said to me that I love the fact that I can create lessons as I'm going. I'd like to actually share them. He came to me one day and he was really upset. He's like, Mom, He said, I'm not really good at anything. I'm just not. There's people who are, like play the piano really well and can do this really, but I don't do anything really well. And I said, congratulations, my son. I am 42 years older than you, and I've got some wisdom about this. Because the kid who was the high school star swimming scholarship person doesn't make a living swimming. He's a lawyer, an accountant, doing something boring, and all he knows how to do is swim. What you have is a little bit like I did of everything. My son, you've been horseback riding at a dude ranch. You can snow ski just well enough. You can water ski. You can rollerblade. I said, I have a piano and my daughter plays. I said, just learn one song on the piano because it's a great way to woo a girl like at a party. You don't have to know anything more than just one song. Smart. And if you can do just a little bit of all of those things, be able to hit a tennis ball and just play the game. You don't have to be the scholarship to college. I don't care. And he looked at me because he does. He plays baseball and football and soccer. And all these. He said, dude, you're great at everything. And it's slowly sinking in how important that is going to be for the rest of his life. Right.
He's going to have the ability to connect with anybody on pretty much anything because he has experience.
Bingo. And so I thought that was a powerful thing. Yeah. And then when my daughter was little, I was a dancer. And I so wanted the two of them. I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to get them to dance class and tutus and keep reliving my childhood. Well, it turns out, and I probably shouldn't say this out loud and hopefully she won't hear this, but she was terrible. Oh my God, it was horrible. She was the kid in the back. And I'm like, oh, she's terrible. I was kind of weirdly embarrassed and thought, oh, and you know what's funny is that, so she followed me because I stopped the dancing part in my 20s and 30s. And when she met me, by the time she became aware of who I was like late 40s. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm on home shopping. And she would come with me. She'd sleep backstage. She would go on infomercial shoots. She would be around meetings that we did. Well, guess what I created by accident? The most amazing little entrepreneur. I couldn't even plan that one if I tried.
Yep. Osmosis is a beautiful thing. Modeling is a beautiful thing. Success leaves clues, and she's experiencing it, watching it, going, well, this is really cool. And look how people respond. And it's a different type of dance, right? It's not so physical. It's more emotional, mental, verbal. But there's correlations there, and it's a flow, and there's all kinds of juicy, fun stuff you can pull out. That's super cool.
Some of my lessons, yeah. And now we are 16 going on. Oh my gosh, in 2 months. Oh shoot, they're going to be September already, isn't it? December 4th, they're going to be 17 years old.
There you go.
All right. I just know that I think when I leave the planet, they're going to be just fine.
Perfect.
I think that's the most important thing you can do.
Absolutely. Right. Give your kids two things. Give them feet somewhere to stand, but then you give them wings to reach for the sky. And if you can give them those two sides, the world becomes an amazing place.
I just read that quote and it made me cry.
So if I could sum up just a couple of things, I know we have a limited window of time here, but if I could sum up, like the things I'm hearing from you, number one is you have a certain level of objectivity that you're able to bring to your family. Like you said, I've trained dogs, so I can train these, I love kids and I love, helping and working with families, but babies, I call them squids because they're just inputs and outputs and it's just a messy mess. And so you're doing a lot of operant conditioning, behavioral conditioning, it's animalistic communication, but giving them that love, giving them that connection, giving them that certainty, and you stay in a calm, relaxed place. That's the world of difference. And it sets that foundation for the next stages to build on. Second thing I heard from your conversation is the idea of them having their own lives and having their own choices and being okay with that versus trying to live vicariously through your kids and trying to make them be like all the things that you didn't get to do. Well, you have gotten to do a ton of stuff. So luckily that urge isn't inside you. You've done a bunch of stuff. So for them, you can kind of step back and let them explore and be curious and own their own life, which is just fantastic. And yeah, that takes a lot of confidence in the parents to be able to just trust the process sometimes and let their kids grow. And then the third thing is love and playfulness. I heard that coming through very loud in everything you said as well. Just giving them the love that they need and the love to each other, to you, as well as being playful and creative and being open.
I will tell you, that's one of the benefits of starting a family a little later. And you said something very important, is that I don't need to live my life through them. Mm-hmm. I've done pretty good. I'm all right. And I'm enjoying going back to elementary school and doing all this, but I have no need to push that. I think when you're younger and you don't know, you scramble a lot. Mm-hmm. And I'm grateful that I didn't have kids when I was personally younger, because I don't think I would have been a very good mom back then, because you don't have the objectivity, because you're living your own life. And by the way, I met a lot of kids who, who's are the kids of moms who are 16 and 17 and they grow up as friends and it's really cool. It's just different than what I experienced. Mm. And if I had a choice, I would say go live your life, because you don't get another one.
Nope.
And it doesn't, by the time you're 40 or 50, your kids are out the door, it's a hard time to start over again.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things I did learn as a woman, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she was the perfect mom on some level. She was there at 3 o'clock with milk and cookies and always had dinner. We had meals around every table. In fact, she kind of screwed me over. She doesn't realize it, but I never did a dish in my whole life, because we would eat dinner. I would get up. She would go do your homework, go to dance class, go do theater. And I thought clothes magically went from my floor back to the drawer. I don't know how it happened. No, actually, there's a really embarrassing story about that. Because, and I will tell it, and I'm sad that I even can say this, but I didn't do any laundry. But because it made my parents very happy that because we went through a hard time. My dad was in the hospital for 3 years. Mm. So I didn't understand laundry. So I'm in college, and I get my first bundle. I'm 17 years old. I graduate high school early, and I'm going into the laundry room, and it's 1977. And there's no segregation in fact, in my hometown, we were the product of an experiment about eye color to help us understand race and things you can't change, because we were all Italian and Jewish. Pizza, pasta, and matzah. And I go to the laundry room, and the woman said, we have to separate the whites from the coloreds. And I'm like, that's horrible. Thank you, Mom.
That's awesome. That joke is only going to make sense for only a little bit longer, and then the next generation's going to...
No, it hurts my heart, and I mean it with all love, but it just was part of the things that I didn't learn. I would teach your kids to cook. I would teach your kids to do laundry. There was a lot of things that I struggle with because I didn't learn from my mother.
Yeah, and we do that in our house. What you do when you would do the 10 questions, they had to play the game and wiggle. We would say, what has to happen? So I want this. Great. What has to happen for you? I would love for you to have that. What has to happen?
Oh, can I do that now with the teenagers? What has to happen?
Yeah, you get them to start deconstructing. Well, to get to this outcome, they can walk backwards and they can sequence it. And then I can just ask questions to increase their awareness. And then they can come to their own conclusions. And what they said has to be true, right? Because they said it. So it's
How old are your children?
I have a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old. Well, no, she's 5 now, and then the 9-year-old will be 10. And then I've got some of my kids are in their 70s, so I've got a range.
All right, that's good. I'm excited to see how your kids turn out. At one point, they go, "Dad, stop messing with me."
Oh no, we haven't got it with my kids, but my students and the children of my students. I remember because I have certain language patterns that I use and certain ways I sequence things. And I remember Shane was from Australia and his daughter was in class and she was taking class. He had both of his daughters and him. And they're at home and there's something going on and he starts using my language track and she goes, "Dad, stop kung fuing me." And she was so mad, but it works. And I've had one of my students had a dysfunctional family situation. So she was actually using my stuff on her mom. And she was frustrated because she's like, "I sound like Sifu, but it works." And I'm like, "Well, thank you."
Because what are some of the language patterns that you do?
Well, just some of the ways we phrase things, like what has to happen. Is that self-control or is that fill in the blank control? Is that self-control or is that candy control? So should you let candy control your life or should you control your life? So I do a lot of reflexive questions where I put it back. The ownership goes back to them for their choice and their consequences. I'm just here to facilitate. That's it, right?
I will tell you that works. My daughter and son were with me walking through the grocery aisle. And again, things that used to bug me were little kids who go, "Mommy, I want candy. Mommy, I just don't like whiny kids." Yep. And so they're about 3.5. And I said something and McKenna, would you go over there and get me an apple? Because we eat it very healthy. And she's like, "Mom," and she was little, but she's like, "Mom, there's only candy here." I'm like, "You mean there's nothing healthy to eat?" And I looked at each other going, "No." And I said, "Well, how is that possible?" And they just looked and said, "Mom, I think bad men put this here to trick us." And so every time we would go through the checkout aisle, I would look at them and go, "Yep, we know, bad men." And I got to tell you, it made the experience so nice and so wonderful and never whiny. So I don't know if I was tricking them, but I got to tell you, it made for a very happy household.
Absolutely.
All right, so before we leave, though, any tips for 16-year-old twins?
16-year-old twins. The biggest thing is, and they're almost 17 here in just a couple months. So the thing is, they're going to be 18. They're going to be autonomous adults. They can sign legal contracts. So the more you can, I would love for you to do that. What has to happen? I would love for you to, whatever it is they want to do, I would love for you to do that.
So play that with me because I'm going to do that too. Because I'm very committed to, I love what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's like hey, can I go to Billy's this weekend?
Okay.
So, okay, great. I'd love for that to happen. What needs to happen around here first? How should your room look? How should this? What about your homework? What needs to happen for me to say yes? If you help me to feel happy about it, what would need to happen for me to say yes? And so if they
Well,
can
that's,
if they can keep you feeling warm, big, and happy, then it's easier for you to help them feel warm, big, and happy.
so what's your advice on kids at that age working or doing sports or after school? What's your theory on that?
All of that stuff is good. Usually by the time kids are 13 to 15, they can begin to make their own decisions and commitments, and they'll start to become self-starters and they'll start to initiate. So what we want to do is look at the context and it's like, well, I want money to go do X, Y, and Z, but I'm doing all this other stuff. Okay, so can we tie their performance in the activity to some sort of an income scale where this is worth money? Because if they're doing good in school and doing good in athletics, that actually is scholarship money. So you're just investing a little bit now for tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars for college. So it's not a bad idea. So it's like, oh, well, no, I'm not going to give you any spending money. Well, but Dad, I'm working so hard. I don't have time to get a job because I'm doing this and I'm in National Merit Honor Society and I'm doing this and this and mock trial and speech and debate. So they're all leveraged out time-wise. So you know what? You're right. If you can stay at this level, you'll receive this and this. And if it drops down, and we can negotiate that, right? And same deal like with their room. However they want to keep their room is great. But I need some sort of guidelines on that. Like in our house, no food in the bedrooms. And if I have to go into your room to find something, then I reserve the right to clean your room. And if I clean your room, I can take stuff because should that be there or whatever. So don't force me to have to do that. And we're cool. But if you force me to go, then there will be pain. Your choice.
You're not quite old enough. What's your take on sleepovers?
We don't do co-ed sleepovers. We haven't had Evie go to anybody else's house yet. We have had somebody come here. And so
Wow, yours are still really young. I'm just curious. There's this whole thing now, not co-ed, but there's a lot of sleepovers in the teenagers. I don't remember doing that personally. I couldn't, but so I'm just not sure how I feel about it.
Right. Well, my friends and I, we did sleepovers and we would stay up until ridiculous hours and we would build Lego forts and we would have like battles and do all kinds of, we were nerds and geeks and we'd do sword battles in the backyard with ray candles and go out in the woods. We spent the night one night out in the woods camping, really stupid, didn't have any idea what we were doing, just a couple of bags on the ground and, wiki that crap if you're going to do it now, kids. So I'm going to give you that advice. So, but yeah, sleepovers, if you know the families, you know who's there, give your kids an out. So if they, actually, we have 2 exchange daughters living with us right now. And this weekend, they're going to go to a bonfire and then spend the night. And so, like, if this or this, you're feeling uncomfortable, they're going to be like a half hour away from us. And that's not that big a deal. You just text us. We will call you. We will have a family emergency and need to come get you. It's not a problem. We'll give you an escape clause that we need you to come home.
That's interesting. Well, I will tell you, I love being there for my kids. I think that's a very important thing that you do for your children. We talk about that was my dad's big thing. Is like, I don't care what you do in terms of drinking or whatever it is. If you need my help and you feel uncomfortable, you pick up. I will always be there in the middle of the night.
Yep.
But something's changed. And I have to tell you, I don't know how to handle this because all of a sudden there are drugs everywhere.
I have a solution.
Oh, all right, go for it. I'm open to listening.
So a friend of mine, Mason Dukacek, he owns a website. It's called testmyteen.com, and it's like home drug testing kits. And the reason you do this is not about whether you trust your kids or don't trust your kids. It gives your kids an out if there's drugs and people put pressure on them. They're like, oh man, I'd love to do that, but my dad's nuts, man. He's mental. He drug tests me. They're like, what? Yeah, my dad has drug tests. Like randomly, he'll drug test me. So I can't do that. I can't. I'd love to, but I can't. You give them a social proof exit from that behavior. And
that's actually a brilliant strategy. I love that.
Yeah, he's got like the whole script, and here's how he's tried to go into schools, and of course, schools are always like, "Oh, we don't have that problem here." So
yeah,
but he's got like, here's how you, because it's more of a social escape for your kids. They have an excuse not to do the behavior because sometimes it's hard when you got people around you to say no. So this way,
that's one avenue. The second one though is it's so prevalent. Everyone's talking about it. They want to try it. They want to partake. They don't want an out. Then what?
Well, then we've got to get into that conversation because there are reasons that your kids are wanting to experiment. The feeling of they want to be out of control. They want to be loose. They want to have an excuse. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I call it adult behavior in pre-adult people. Because why is it okay for adults to do certain things like alcohol, but it's not for kids? There's a girl I dated, and her dad started training her on wine from when she was 12. So he educated her palate. She will not drink anything less than a $50 bottle of wine when I met her at 19.
Well,
Because
that's
her
what I've
palate
heard.
is educated, I can't drink that stuff. It gives me a headache. It makes me sick to my stomach.
Got it.
And in Europe,
Yeah.
the alcohol is not that big a deal. So it's a case-by-case basis with your kids, but it really gets into where is this coming from? What is this need? And a lot of times it's kids who don't have control or they don't have consequences.
I think it's also just the fact they're so around it. It's fascinating to me. But it's gonna be fun to watch your kids grow up.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm excited for it.
Amazingly, oh, when you should. I mean, I wish I could have taken 1,000 more photos when they were little.
Yep, I've got
back. No, I love it now, but.
All right, so I've got a couple of hot seat questions before we bounce out.
Yeah.
First one, what is one healthy habit that every parent should have?
Water. This baloney about when you first, I remember I was at a kid's party, the kids were like 1 or 2, and the menu was Cheetos on the table, pizza, soda, and then they fed them cake. My heart went, you've got to be kidding.
Wow.
Because every one of those sets up such a bad system for your little ones. And when you do have control when they're 1 or 2, don't waste it. Don't throw it away. That's the time to get them to eat the vegetables, to taste the water. My kids had a huge advantage because they grew up as the kind of unofficial godchildren of Jack LaLanne.
Mm-hmm.
And Jack always said, if man made it, don't eat it. So that used to be the thing we'd walk around our house. And my daughter would go, did man make this? I said, well, if it's one word, odds are God made it, like apples and chicken and cantaloupe and lemons. And if not, no, man made it, and that's not great for you. And not that I said it, but Jack LaLanne said it. Look how healthy he is in his late 80s.
Right.
And so setting by example. Then I had one other thing that I love about water, especially if they're little. And my daughter, again, she's 16, and we just told this story, and she was like, Mom, I remember this. Oh, my gosh. I used to say that when kids were little, they would get a cut, and it would heal overnight, right? And I'd say, wow, how cool is that? Well, you know how that happens, little guys? Is that you've got these little people inside of you. They look like Bob the Builder. They have little yellow helmets on with a little light on it. When you go to sleep, they wake up and their only job is to fix you. They walk around and they put things back together again. They make you grow a little bit, but they have a cup. And the only thing that keeps them going, because they related to the old Bob the Builder thing, is pouring water in the cup. If there's no water in the cup, they don't move. And if there's too much sugar, they get so hyped, they pass out, they fall asleep, and you end up getting larger and larger. So that story is about 10 years old for my daughter, and she vividly remembered how I placed it in her head. But then she also embarrassed me, and one day she's like, Mommy, look, her little guys are sleeping, because she was a rather large person. But to this day, we made it so much fun that they were filling this cup for somebody else to take care of them. Think about that psychology, that they don't drink soda. They just don't, which is amazing that I've got these 2 kids who don't. But we reinforced it in such a positive way that, you know, it's just a phenomenon. I'm so proud of them. So water.
Yeah, you gave them a stronger story than society. I love it. Yeah, Evie's, I drink water, I drink milk. Do you want juice? That's disgusting.
Okay, then we have a whole theory about milk too. Do you know about milk?
Yeah, I know the whole thing about milk. But
no, you know, anybody can do whatever they want. But it's funny because I told my daughter the same story about milk, and she was like, Mom, she comes home one day, she's like, Mom, you're wrong. Everybody in school says that you're wrong, which is interesting energy to get from your child. And I said, well, do you get sick? Do you have any allergies? Do you runny nose? She said, no, Mom, I'm totally healthy. I said, watch the kids around you. The only difference between you and them is milk.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No Milk is an interesting website. And yeah, I've done a bunch of research and stuff. And we try to balance how much clean versus how much junk. Because as a Kung Fu person, you got to take the hit. Sometimes you don't get a choice what you eat. You just got to roll with it. And
let me tell you, my grandfather was a butcher. I grew up, I have some habits with food that are comfort things that, we don't, sometimes you just enjoy your life. There's a balance. I think George Burns died with a cigar in his mouth at age 100. So
there you
know
go.
What?
Exactly right. Number 2, what is the best advice that you have ever received?
Oh, that you are the sum of the obstacles you overcome. And that if you're going to go through bad things in your life, and everybody does, you don't get out of this life without that. It's how you choose to handle them, to think about that life happens for you, not to you. And so very often when I go through something bad, which does happen, loved ones that loved ones will die, you will get fired, embarrassing things will happen. And you just go, wow. I don't say that everything happens for a reason. I say everything happens and then you bring the reason out of it. And it's made the tough times in my life very manageable.
Nice. Number 3, what is a book that everyone should read?
My next one is called What Have You Forbes Lately? Funny you should say that. And it's actually a collection of 34 entrepreneur stories, or you can read my Eat Journal to figure out how you can not diet. But I think you mean a book, not just me. Gosh, you know what? There's a whole bunch that I love. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I read very early on Og Mandino's The Greatest Salesman in the World. It's a very short little parable. And I will tell you, having sold $2.5 billion, it's become a valuable book. But there's a lot of them out there that I just, enjoy. There's such a wealth of knowledge that can be gleaned from reading.
Yeah, Greatest Salesman's on my shelf behind me, in fact.
There you go.
And then what would you want people, as they listen to this podcast, what's the number one thing they should take away from our conversation today?
They didn't realize that she was such a good mom. No, because I don't know that people, however they think about me being out there and doing what I do, but the world begins and ends with my kids. And I'm not going to get emotional about it, but I made, I was so scared when I was growing up because we didn't have any money. And my dad was in the hospital for 3 years. But somehow we managed to go on vacations and have an amazing life. And I never noticed anything was wrong. So in my late 20s or 30s, I thought, wow, I hope that I can do as good for my kids as my parents did for me. Well, they did it with no money. And I have made sure that my kids have taken vacations because I know that MOM stands for moments of memories. And you got to carve those out. And when I realized that I don't remember a lot of my childhood, none of us do, but I remember those big moments. So I said, and a lot of them were like outside of the house on a vacation of any kind. And if I ask my kids to this day, we did go to China and we walked on the Great Wall. We did go to Europe. And I'll tell you what, even without a lot of money, we've made all of those things happen because those are the things they do remember. So make your kid's life memorable a moment at a time. It's okay if you miss a football game or a competition or whatever, because you don't remember those as adults either. Neither do they.
Beautiful. I love it. It's been a great conversation, and I definitely want to do another one, talk about the entrepreneurialism with kids. I think that'd be fantastic. And so Forbes, I already know, but how can people find you? Where are you at? Where are you living these days online?
Definitely go to Forbes Riley 360. There you can find my links to everything social media. I actually still answer my own social media. So if you reach out to me on Instagram, you will get me. And then I teach a program like you do. I love passing knowledge on. I teach adults who are entrepreneurs who want to take their life to the next level. There's 2 things that they need. One, they need a little better business savvy. And 2, they need to get through the traumas of their past to be able to rewrite a better future for themselves. And I specialize in this, and I love it. And that's called ForbesFactorLive.com.
Love it. And that's it for today. I think this has been a great conversation. I can't wait to do it again as your schedule allows, because I know you're literally all over.
I'm not kidding. I actually think you really synthesized some of my thoughts and my actions way better than I ever did. And it sounded like a real actionable book to me. So I'm kind of in that mode.
Okay. Well, I know how to write stuff. I've got several done and more in the works.
It's congratulations for all that you're doing as well. What a great time to be alive, to be able to podcast and pass all this information on in a chunkable, sizable, digestible way. It's great. And I think my daughter just joined me on Facebook Live, and so now I can't talk about her anymore. I love you.
All right. Well, you have a great day, and we will see you when we see you. Thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome.
You're blessed. Bye-bye.
All right. And that's it. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.